Hey, I'm Joe and welcome to my garage. What I'm gonna try and do next is get the stock carburetor into my 1983 Honda CB1100F. So I have the airbox in, I had to buy something off eBay, had to buy a bunch of parts to get it all back together. And now I'm gonna try and fit the carbs in. They're all clean, they're all set up. They've got the fuel hose on them. There's still one jet that I'm waiting for. The jets that they sent me are not the correct size. They're a little bit taller than they're supposed to be, so they're not gonna work. People have issues trying to start the bike if you use the wrong jets. So I'm gonna try and fit these in. This is a little tricky. I need to make sure everything clamps. I need to make sure everything seals. Otherwise, the bike's not gonna ride properly. And I also need to hook up the throttle cables and the choke linkage. So hopefully these are still the stock cables. I haven't checked to see if they are, but hopefully they are, fingers crossed, and I'll try and get it in. Enjoy. All right, let's get these carbs removed. It does look like these carbs are missing a bunch of clamps as well. So I'm gonna loosen them in both places, see if this helps get these carbs off. Okay, it looks like there's a clamp there, and then it looks like there's a clamp on the other side, and there are no clamps in the middle. All right, those clamps are loose. All right, next, let's unscrew both of these nuts that are holding the throttle cables on. I have a feeling I'm gonna have to grease up the throttle cables as well. Hopefully these are still the factory throttle cables. They look like they are. Make this easier, we'll just pull off each of these because they're not on tight. They are K&N filters, which are nicer filters. All right. So they came off pretty easily. So let's unscrew these throttle cables without spilling much gasoline. So there's one. Here's the other. Now we can pull it out. It's not bad. So while we've got them out, we'll take a look at these carbs real quick, side by side. So after a quick trip to AutoZone, I was able to get the fuel hose. So this is, I think, 5/8 going into a 5/8 T here. I got this from AutoZone as well. These clamps, same thing. And then this is a 1/4 inch hose that's going in. So I had to enlarge this a little bit using a punch just to make sure that it was gonna fit, because usually the fuel outlet is a little bit smaller than the 5/8 hose. So this should work well for us. So this is the stock airbox. This is a new boot. The rest of them were already on. I had to buy new screws, and then on the other side, there is a new air filter that I had installed. So it's all new hardware on this. I went and cleaned it out, made sure there was nothing that was gonna be sucked into the engine, and now I have to fit these carbs in. And the first thing is getting these throttle linkages on the carbs. That makes it much easier. Now, before we attempt the install of the carbs, we need to make sure that we have all the clamps that we need. So there are clamps that attach the carburetor to the airbox. That is these. So I bought 4 new ones because the old carbs only came with 3 and they weren't in great shape. So I'll probably not end up using those at all. So we use these 4. And then I took a look at the carb boots themselves, and there's only 2 clamps on these 4. So I should have 2 other clamps that I can use for my collection. I think all the rest of these should be usable. To get the airbox clamps on, I'm just gonna unscrew them all the way. And I'm going to fit them over like this. And then I'm just gonna thread them only a few times. I want to make sure it has enough room to come in here and stretch and fit perfectly. Otherwise it's going to make this job harder because we have to get all 8 of these to line up at the same time. Another thing to remember when you're putting these on, make sure these screw faces this way, and then the other side, the screws face that way. Make it a lot easier trying to tighten it down. All right, so the throttle cable that has these 2 nuts should be the one that goes here, and this is going to be the pull. So when I grip down on the throttle, it should pull up, and then it will lift this right here. And sit like that. And then the choke cable is right here. Choke is working, sliding well. So we'll slide the carb in just like this. Just making sure we're not knocking off any of those clamps while we're doing this. Got this clutch cable right here. Clutch cable is a little tight. Pull the gearbox back as far as it'll go. All right, so clutch looks like it's okay. Looks like it has enough room. Looks like it's out of the way. All right, carbs look like they're in a pretty good position. So I'm gonna try and get the intake part of the carbs into the engine. We'll get them all screwed down. These will hold it in place, and then I will position the gearbox, because this does move forward and backwards. So I'm going to get this choke cable out of the way. All right, so that's looking pretty good. Need to make sure I get all these clamps back in place. All right, let's tighten them down. Those look good. Let's get the 2 from the other side. 3 is not on completely. We can gently pry this on. All right, so the gearbox is finally on. All the screws are secured. So next thing I gotta do is get the throttle cable back on. All right, so to get the throttle back on, I will slide up the grip. And I'll feed this up and over like that. And then I'll feed this other throttle cable up. Make sure the throttle seats inside the assembly. All right, that's it for tonight. Thanks for watching. If you want to get notifications when I release new videos, feel free to hit subscribe. Take care.